This is MLB Now. We are the show for the thinking fan. Hello again, everybody. I'm Brian Kenny. Good to be back with you. Ryan Dempster and John Heyman on the panel today. We'll talk Shohei Ohtani and also take a look at Negro League history coming alive. Bobby Witt is breaking out. We've got our baseball-y and unbaseball-y plays, the Braves and Angels, getting a little loose this week. Ron Washington had to get involved. But first, a major story of the early going, of course. Let's address it in depth. Pitcher injuries once again at the forefront. We ask the question, is it getting worse? Let's do a little digging in. First of all, no, it's not an injury epidemic, not this year. It's a normal spring. Spencer Strider and Shane Bieber are big names, so it does get a lot of attention when two stars get hurt in the same weekend. But Travis Sawchik of The Score wrote about this a few days ago. There were 16 Tommy John surgeries in the majors and minors through the first 100 days of this year. Over the last 10 seasons, and this is according to Sawchik and his research, and Sawchik is a credible reporter, the average over the first 100 days is 33. Again, 16 this year, the average is 33. This year's number is a rough figure. There could be some not scheduled as of yet, but there's no significant rise in the number of injuries, or at the very least. And as of now, there are actually fewer than average for this year. The Players Association put out a letter last week asking about the effect of the pitch timer. Everything could be examined, of course, but there is no rise in pitching injuries since the introduction of the pitch timer. There are obviously larger forces at work here. Let's start with this. Recent history. I'm not going to go that far back. 2008. The average Major League fastball was 91.9 miles per hour. As of last season, average fastball, 94.2. That's the average. In 2008, there were 214 pitches hitting 100 miles an hour. Last year, there were over 3,800. We talk about the greater forces at work all the time on this show, but for just this once, I'd like to back up, widen the lens, and spell them out. Now, we don't do that enough. 1, sports specialization and pitcher specialization. That's emphasizing on baseball and then pitching. As recently as 25 years ago, the kind of kid that would be drafted by Major League Baseball would be playing different sports all year round. That's changed. Not only that, but about 25 years ago, a pitching prospect would be pitching and probably playing shortstop. I saw it all the time. The top kid in high school would be the club's best hitter or fielder as well. Now a kid becomes a golden arm, and all he does from an early age is throw. So that's two separate things happening at the same time that are accelerating each other as a force. We have a kid that used to be playing baseball, football, and basketball. Now, he's not just playing baseball, he's just pitching. All right, number 2. That kid is not only just pitching, he is pitching all year round on travel teams, all-star teams, school teams. It's highly competitive. You need to make those teams. What gets you on those travel teams and all-star teams? Velocity and stuff. And every dad and mom and uncle and coach has better tools to measure velo, stuff, and biomechanics. We can talk a good game, saying that what we want is a kid who is well-rounded and can pitch, right? But what we reward at every single level is velo and stuff. Every kid knows popping the mitt, a big fastball, is what gets you on the all-star team, gets you on the travel team, gets you on an elite high school team, gets you drafted, gets you a bonus, and then even within the minor leagues, gets you promoted. At every level, every day, what a kid learns is that popping the mitt gets rewarded. Popping the mitts pays. Velo pays. So that leads to what has come about in the last decade, specific velocity training, the icing on the cake. Amid the small super class of super kid, that kid looks to separate himself from the other super kids by working to increase his velo. So even if your elbow survives the gauntlet to the majors, you're still looking to throw harder. So we can say what we want, that we don't want velo, but every actual action says otherwise. Velo plays. Velo works. And unfortunately, everything else that's happened over the last 2 decades has accelerated the arms race, all while the human elbow and its tiny ligament has not changed. I want to show you something from earlier this week. This is Michael Kopech of the White Sox. He's already had Tommy John surgery on that elbow. And in 10 years since he's been drafted, he has never thrown more than 140 innings in a pro season. He broke in throwing 95. 2 years later, after his surgery, he was sitting 97. This week, with all of his history of injury, he comes out of the bullpen and he's throwing 102 miles an hour. He's averaging 98.5 this year, throwing faster than ever. Michael Kopech knows what every 10-year-old knows. Velo pays. You can hope that each individual in each club will work to pitch and not chase velocity. You can limit roster spots to incentivize it if you're Major League Baseball, but the hunt for velocity at the expense of the elbow is just part of a larger grassroots dynamic. And good luck stopping it. Let's go to our panel. John Heyman, Ryan Dempster. Ryan Dempster, by the way, former Major League pitcher, drafted 1995. Ryan, I guess it was a different era way back then. Doesn't seem that long ago, but it's a different era.
Yeah, a different era, and the emphasis on those things, right? The high velocity, the spin rate, the shape of the ball, how we're making it shape is different than it's been, the sweeper or the side-to-side angle. And I think it's unfortunate because I hate this more than anything. Like, it really disturbs me. I sit there at night and I watch somebody go down. Like, this guy, another Cy Young Award winner, another Cy Young candidate, another bright arm in this league. Why are we going down? Why is this happening time after time after time? And it's those things you talk about, and especially to me, the spin rate factor more than the velocity, because that's ultimately what they're trying to do, is generate more velocity through spin. And then one thing that I don't think we do enough of, and that is not emphasized, is running. We don't run enough, And you look at spin rate right here. I'll get to the running in a second, but you look at the spin rate. Look at these increases, right? And I built this graphic. I did it Tuesday night, and I'm going to bring it back right now. But if you take two players and you want to go ahead, and here's player A and player B, okay? Player A, you look at the innings, miles per hour, roughly the same, a little bit down on player B. Look at those spin rates. That curveball spin rate right there is the highest recorded spin rate at almost 3,000 RPMs. Okay. Then you go to slider spin rate. Good ERA. Player A, Tommy John. Player B, 5-year contract getting paid in the starting rotation. You want to reveal and see who these are?
Okay.
All right. Same player.
Oh.
Player B, Tyler Glasnow, the 2023 version, has ticked down almost 350 revolutions in his, dropping it down 300 revolutions on the spin rate. What's he doing? He's staying healthier. His arm feels better. He's bouncing back better because there's not this torque decay.
So he's made the adjustment to have less torque, to have less violent action on his own arm. All right. Yeah. I want to ask you, let me go back. How hard did you throw when you were in high school, let's say? Do you even know?
Top 92 miles an hour, and I pitched at 90, 91.
All right, and that's a real fastball in high school, right? I remember covering high school baseball. This was a few years before you. Yeah. About covering high school baseball, John. Not when I was in high school, but covering high school baseball. Right. The local team, Kingston, New York, went to the American Legion World Series, so a serious team. And their best pitcher was popping the mitt, left-hander at 86 miles an hour. It seemed like a real fastball. So that's not that long ago. That guy, this kid's walking the earth. He's a major league scout now. Mike Jewell is his name. He's out there. He was popping the mid at 86, and we were like, wow, what a fastball. He's striking out 16, 17 guys. So we've gotten here. I don't know if there's any going back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, everything you said is right. I'm certainly not going to disagree with a very successful major league pitcher. He certainly knows what he is talking about. You said velocity plays. I would say it pays. That's the impetus. That's the reason that all these kids are trying to throw 95 or better miles per hour. And it's a shame because I don't know we're going to ever see a rotation like Maddox, Glavine again, right? I mean, obviously Smoltz threw really hard and had unbelievable stuff, but I mean, Glavine was throwing 90 miles an hour. Maddox, same thing. I mean, I don't know if these guys would be drafted now. Jose Quintana from the Mets talked about he wouldn't have gotten looked at. And he's throwing 89 miles an hour to this day, and he's their #1 starter at the moment because Senga is hurt.
And John Smoltz has said many times, again, we used to work with us, we still talk to John a lot. He played 3 sports. He was bowling in the wintertime.
Absolutely. It's everything you said is up there. And these pitching academies, I won't name them, and we don't publicize them, but these pitching academies, Bieber went to one of them. I saw him in spring training, interviewed him. He talked about he went to this pitching academy, got some velocity back. He was throwing an extra 2 miles per hour his first 2 starts, looked fantastic, and then he blew out, and now he needs Tommy John. He was a guy who was a free agent after the year.
All right. So,
fortunate.
I want to ask you a specific question. Is there anything that can pump the brakes on this? Is there anything that can sort of slow the whole dynamic down?
I think you're going to have to monetize innings again, like they used to be, where there's some sort of value behind keeping a guy healthy. rather than just the next up. You bring a kid up, he pitches well, he hurts his elbow. The next guy, we'll just get whoever's pitching well in Double-A this week, and he throws hard. Like he was saying, these specialized institutions, while being great to develop velocity, we are not developing pitchers. We are just developing throwers that throw hard. It's, I see it all the time. The video on Twitter where it's like 97, cool, it's off the brick wall. Like it's not a strike. What does it matter?
Right.
Well, we'll teach them how to throw strikes, but can we do that? And the thing, two things. One, right away in the offseason. So you want to gain velocity. Where's the rest? You mentioned that in the open there, all these kids throwing. And when I was a young kid coming up in the big leagues and I'm throwing, and I remember Mike Messina, I'm out there on the line throwing long toss, and he said, hey, kid, remember, you only have so many bullets in that arm. You only have so many throws before something might go wrong. That's just absolutely science. You only have, the very few guys can go without getting hurt. Nowadays, somebody is to tick down because their shoulder's a little bit tight. It's like, well, hold on, we'll back off and we'll put you here. Sometimes you got to get through those things. There's all this evolution of what it took, and also rest, how vital and how rest is important. I mentioned running, and I'm going to stand by this right now. I tell you this, they do not run enough in the big leagues. They don't run enough in the minor leagues because there was this philosophy that came along with new strength and conditioning coaches where they say, can't run the ball to home plate. Cool, I get that. But what running does on two different levels, one, you run after a start. After a start, 100 pitches, 90 pitches, whatever, I'm tight. Now I got lactic acid in my shoulder, in my elbow, in my bicep tendon, all these things that needs to get broken up. That can't just be done in a training room with stim. You get oxygen in your blood system, then you start getting it through there, and then that's how that starts the process to 5 days later.
That actually affects your shoulder.
100%. You ask the guys to do that. And then on top of it, poles. Who runs on the field? They don't. They go on the pre-cord, they go on the bike. And I'm not knocking these kids. It's not their fault. It's what they're being taught. We're hiring strength and conditioning coordinators who weren't around the game of baseball. Maybe they came from rugby or they came from tennis or whatever it is. Like, he's got some great ideas. How about the guys who played a long time consult teams and be like, this is a really good idea because this worked to keep me healthy? And I think it's something that's missing. I think it's something that's vital. If you ask a few pitchers around the league who started running more, doing those polls, veteran guys that pitch for a long time, that's a huge part that does not get done.
Interesting. Right, and there's a lot of survivor bias in that. But I often say, look, there are men walking the earth still that used to throw 250 innings, or relief pitchers that used to throw 100 innings. And they have the same human body. And I just, one last thing. I know Al Leiter.
They didn't play catch in November, I'll tell you.
Right, true. Al Leiter told me a story when his son Jack was, a young star here, and he was at some youth league game, and Jack pitched great, and he said that some shortstop went 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs, had these big games, and he said what hit on Twitter at the time was some kid come out of the bullpen, was 15 years old, and hit like 95. And he said that's all anybody talked about. Yep. And that's all that played, that's all that got around. Now, not the guys who were actually playing the game and dominating the game, but it was like who popped the mitt. So like the tools aspect of it, because that's what projects to be a major leaguer. And I don't know how you stop that. We'll take a short break. You've never done the showdown?
No.
I figured we would have put the hit on you at some point to get in there. We'll grab Millar in here now and then. All right.
Well, it's been a minute since I've been here, so.
All right. Well, you're back here. All right, let's start with this now. I think we might disagree on this. A beef has emerged. I love that. A beef has emerged between Cal Raleigh of the Mariners and Blue Jays manager John Schneider. Raleigh had 2 homers this week against the Blue Jays this week and was asked about comments that Schneider made last year. It seems like it's a little too sensitive. Like he's asked about, hey, do you remember what he said about you last year? Yeah, I do. I mean, come on with that. Like, are we a little too sensitive on that?
I remember when my high school gym teacher told me I wasn't going to be good enough to play in the big leagues. I held on to that for a long time.
That's a broad thing as opposed to like there's one simple thing. No, let me set this up too. Like, you hit the 2 home runs. He was asked about it, about something that the opposing manager said about him last year. Listen, and here it is. We got from last year. Listen to the question. Listen to the answer.
Hey, John, what about Cal Raleigh makes him so tough to pitch to?
He's not very tough to pitch to when you execute your pitches. He's hitting 200, but it's I know he's done damage against us, and I think if you execute, he's obviously got big, damage potential, and he's got a lot of strikeout potential too. And when you execute your pitches, you usually get the job done.
So a manager actually kept it real and answered the question. He's given a weak question. What makes him so tough since he hit 2 home runs? Well, he's not so tough. He's at 200. Like, I like that. That's actual. We're getting a little peek behind the curtain. There's actual analysis. He kept it real there. I don't think he should be punished for that.
Okay, so in that question, he gets asked that instead of it making about Cal Raleigh, might not make it about your lack of execution by your pitchers.
That is kind of what he was saying.
Yeah, but he went at him. He's not that hard to pitch to. So if I'm a player, this game, they always say it, right? There's so much mentality to this game. It's about what's between your your ears. And if you're a player that's just the sleeping dog over there, why wake him? Why stir that guy and give him any kind of extra motivation where he has to now use that tool that has made him a big league baseball player, that tool being the one between his ears, his brain, the motivation that you can draw off of that, you know? And so for Cal Raleigh, now all of a sudden it becomes personal. You made it personal by saying something personal about me.
That he hits 200.
Make it about your own team. Stay in your own dugout.
I think that's what he was saying, but you're right. He did bring it to.
And then look at his numbers, BK, against the Mariners. This is against the Blue Jays. 295, 10, and 820 slugging. Yet, meanwhile, he's an easy out, right, John? Well, it's proving that he's not an easy out, at least not against your team. And meanwhile, all his pitchers are going, hey, dude, thanks, man. We used to be able to get away with mistakes against this guy, and now we can't do that.
You know what? But there's so much weak commentary in sports where people are afraid to say anything, and we all get these vanilla answers left and right. I appreciate a guy who actually gave me a real answer. That's what I'm saying. And then when Raleigh comes back, his quote, you see his quote, was essentially saying, well, if you don't have anything to say nice, don't say anything about it. He said, yeah, I know a lot of guys have beef with him in the league, so his comments aren't surprising. I didn't have much to say. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. No, you already said it. Like Cal, you already said something. You said, well, I'm not going to say anything. No, you already said it, that people have beef with him around the league. So that got personal as well.
Well, I know you love this kind of stuff because covering boxing for all these years, you love the little banter.
I don't love the banter. No, I like the actual competition, but I like especially now there's not as many reporters going to baseball games. It's not even like when you were in Boston, I mean, God forbid, where things are actually real and they're asking you questions and they don't just let you off the hook. Now it's like, how tough is he to pitch to? Oh, he's very tough to pitch to, but, you know, I don't know what we can do against that guy. I'd rather have a guy keep it real. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. I'd rather have a real answer said. I know he dinged him a little bit. His ego was hurt a little bit, and it motivated him. Good. Doesn't it make this whole sport a little more interesting?
Yeah, well, that's what you want, right? Competition is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Who rises in that moment? I think now you got to have a meeting with your pitchers and be like, hey, guys, you're making me look bad because I said this guy's an easy out and you guys aren't executing anything.
And you're killing us. Yes.
And you're killing us.
Always killing
because
us.
the numbers don't lie. If we're going to play that, the numbers are playing out.
Fair enough. I like a little more interesting sport, that's all. But why? Here's my thing, too. Big picture now.
Yeah.
Why, I wonder, in this age of the Orioles, we're seeing this in real time. If I broaden it out more, I could give you a list of teams that aren't rebuilding, right? And the Orioles did a full rebuild, and it's paying off. Here are the teams that I say should be rebuilding, but are not. They're trying to, as they say, refuel the plane while it's in the air. Mets, Padres, Cardinals, all got their comeuppance last year. All are sort of rebuilding, but not really. And the Red Sox are always sort of rebuilding, but not really. And you're kind of stuck in between. I know there's a wild card that you could grab now, and maybe you can get lucky, but wouldn't those teams be better off retrenching and coming back stronger in 3 years?
When I look at that list, I probably say one of those teams maybe who I would put on that list, and that's the St. Louis Cardinals, just for the fact that you're talking a little bit in that smaller market, mid-market team, a team that prides themselves on player development and how
they
well
actually have the strongest position player base, I think, out of any of those teams.
Yeah, and lacking in the pitching department, so maybe you can trade some of those guys away and load up your pitching staff because, as we're finding out in the first segment, pitching is a coin flip. Who's going to stay healthy and who's going to go out there and develop? Now, when I look at teams on there, the New York Mets should never be rebuilding. You are in New York City with Steve Cohen as your owner with umpteen amounts of money.
But you can get on that treadmill and you're chasing it year after year and not quite getting there.
I understand that. So then that's on your scouting, that's on your general manager, whoever's putting that team together, because they have missed. Like I looked at it. So you had Edwin Diaz, you sign him back as, you know, to a big deal. He gets injured, okay, right? Francisco Lindor, he hit 30-30 last year. He had that rough start to his Mets career, but he's kind of turned around. Then you go like misses on starting pitchers, Verlander, Scherzer, you trade them away. Miss on Starling Marte. You miss on these free agents. Now all of a sudden that trickles down. Right. So you have to hit on them. You have to hit on those guys.
You hear what you're saying? It is the constant chase, the constant opportunity to keep spending money that gets you down that road. Now you start spinning your wheels. It didn't work because you have the opportunity to spend that money. Now David Stearns comes in, and I know he has the pressure of, I know we kind of want to win, but you know he'd rather rebuild, like and do it the quieter way. But in the big markets, I think it's a blessing and a curse. New York and Boston. They say you can't rebuild. I disagree with that. You can, but there's a cost, and you need to explain it and come back stronger in 3 years. I think you spin your wheels more doing it this way.
Well, and also, you can, yes, I understand what you're saying, but if you hit with your free agents, then you allow those players that you've already drafted to develop in the minor leagues. Look at the Texas Rangers, for example, right? A couple years ago, they signed Corey Seager, big, huge deal. Marcus Semien, big deal. John Gray, they go out there. They don't win the World Series. They don't go to where they were looking to go. But what that did was it established now we can go out there and we can sign some more free agents and add those pieces via trade.
But they also were drafting they were doing a rebuild.
But it allowed those guys to develop and come up, right? So those guys were able to develop a little bit. So when they do come up, the Evan Carters.
All right, so wait, just bottom line it. You're saying Padres and Mets and Red Sox, you agree with what they're doing?
I agree with philosophically as an organization. Otherwise, cool. You want to rebuild in those markets?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, okay, drop your ticket prices way down because I'm not going to sit here and pay for you to go and run out and basically tank.
Come on.
That's what's happened.
They're not Red Sox and Mets, they've been.
So if I'm a season ticket holder, and I've paid all this money to watch these players play because you want your team to win. I
disagree with that philosophy. I think you're talking about sophisticated fans in both those cities that would understand a rebuild. They understand. Like even if you pull it down to the studs and you start look at Baltimore now.
Yeah. And Baltimore didn't miss, right? All their draft picks: Grayson Rodriguez, Jackson Holliday, Heston Kjerstad, all these guys that are coming to, and the guys that are there, Colin Cowsers. These guys, Adley Rutschman, you didn't miss.
Yeah.
So then the bigger story, more than the rebuild, it might be your scouting department. You got to make sure that and player development. Sure. And otherwise, you can rebuild all you want.
You also don't spend money where you don't need it. You spend money on your team that will be your eventual.
The Pittsburgh Pirates have been rebuilding for 20 years.
They look pretty good this year.
Yeah, this year they.
And they understand that. I would pay to see a rebuilding team. I would appreciate if I think the organization is
more
going
like 10 years for the Pirates. I shouldn't say 20. The mid 2010s they were doing pretty good.
We'll take a short break. Well, just this week, on Thursday, to be specific, the Charles J. Muth Museum in Hinchcliffe Stadium opened in Paterson, New Jersey. It's a museum largely a tribute to the Negro Leagues. Over 20 future Hall of Famers in the 30s and 40s played at Hinchcliffe Stadium in Paterson, New Jersey. We bring in Dave Kaplan to tell us all about it right now. Dave, it's Brian Kenny. Good to see you once again.
Good to see you, Brian.
Tell us about the museum, then tell us a little about the history of the Negro Leagues in Paterson.
Yeah, I mean, Hinchcliffe Stadium had a major role in Negro League baseball. Hinchcliffe was built during the Great Depression, opened in 1932, and it was a home of the colored championship of the nation, which was really the equivalent of the World Series in 1933. It became home for about a dozen years of the New York Black Yankees and also for several years for the New York Cubans. So this was really I think there's been 188 venues that hosted professional black baseball, but only Hinchcliffe and Rickwood Field in Birmingham are the only two existing stadiums.
Really? They're the only ones that have survived to this point?
Correct. In its full integrity, yes, and still playing baseball there.
What things do you try to get across in the museum then, especially for younger kids who come in and try to look at it who are baseball fans?
Well, it's funny, Brian. People in Paterson had no idea that Negro League baseball was played there. Obviously, the games ended in the mid '40s, and the Negro Leagues, went into decline. But really, this is, racial segregation was a norm in our country, and Hinchcliffe was one of the places. Paterson embraced Negro League baseball. Paterson was largely a white city made up of working-class mill workers. It was covered extensively by the mainstream white press. So it was really a great, symbol of hope, I think, for America. The fact that, whites just really appreciated great talent and the courage of these black players.
Now, Larry Doby was a figure. I know he was always in Montclair, New Jersey, not that far away. Obviously played for the New York Giants, played in the Negro Leagues too, Hall of Famer. What's his relationship here? How often did he play there?
Oh, well, Larry grew up in Paterson. He moved to Paterson when he was 14 years old. He played at nearby Eastside High School. He was All-State in 4 sports. He got his whole start at Hinchcliffe Stadium. And Larry has always said that his greatest memories are those Thanksgiving Day rivalries against crosstown rival Central, where Hinchcliffe would be packed with about 15,000 people. Hinchcliffe was right in the middle of Paterson in the sense that I think 70% of the population was just a 15-minute walk to. So it was really a communal hub for the whole city.
4 sports. What was the 4th sport for Larry Doby?
He had track, baseball, basketball. He was an incredible basketball player, actually a professional, and football.
And football. He had track and field in there too as well. Wow, an all-time great. You wrote the Bill Yancey Experience. That's on ball9.com right now. Tell us about Bill Yancey.
So when I was doing, I was the interim director of and doing a lot of the research, getting the museum established, and I came across this player who played for the New York Black Yankees. He grew up in Philadelphia, named Bill Yancey, and I couldn't find too much about him, and yet I found his history was remarkable, and his history was lost, was not told. This is a guy who was actually the very first black player to step foot in Yankee Stadium, the very first Negro League game at Yankee Stadium in 1930. But he also became the very first black scout in Phillies history, first black scout in Yankees history. He was a man responsible for signing Al Downing. He championed baseball in the country of Panama, where he was such a big figure there. So I thought that this story really needed to be told. Bill was also a phenomenal basketball player, playing for the New York Rens, the New York Renaissance, which is probably one of the most storied and accomplished pro basketball teams. It was an all-black team in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And his story is sort of lost to history. And I think that's what we want to do with the museum, is tell these great stories and achievements and courage of these great black athletes who did not get a chance to play mainstream white sports.
It's great, Dave, that just the way you're describing it, that thousands of people packing the stadium and people in the city coming out to see it, right? And if it's not told, if you don't get it out there, it is right, as you said, lost to history, and it's important to get that out there. Dave, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Brian. Take care.
Dave Kaplan there again, the Hinchliffe Stadium in. All right, StatCast is powered by Google Cloud. Time for our StatCast standout. I just took a quick look. I knew Bobby Witt was having a great start to the season. I didn't know he was actually dominating in the StatCast stats as well, where he is just crushing the ball. Ex-WOBA is kind of the main thing I would say here. That is the quality of the contact with your results. He is #1 in baseball, so he's not getting hit lucky. It's not just his speed. He is crushing the ball. Also, I didn't realize he is hitting the ball. He's not pulling the ball. These are balls, non-pulled balls. So to center and to opposite field, this is a slugging percentage on balls that have not been pulled. And Ryan hit 80% of his batted balls not pulled.
Yeah, I watched him yesterday. 2 opposite field home runs, a hanging breaking ball that he threw in the other team's bullpen. And then he takes a 97-mile-an-hour fastball top of the zone and goes right center for a home run. So this kid is doing unbelievable things. And you talk about hitting the fastball, BK, slugging 1,500 against four-seam fastballs in a league that's 95 and plus is where we're at with the miles an hour. So you can't throw it by him. His approach is center of the bag to right field. Now you spin anything in the zone with 2 strikes, he's going to pull it to left. That's where he's going to get his base hits to left. And he's doing it all. And then the contact point, too. He doesn't strike out a lot. This guy is the cream of the crop right now.
Right, so he's joining the elite. And it's almost, are we going to have a Bobby Witt best player in baseball conversation? I didn't know we were going to have as elite, as super elite as I thought he was, and he's the face of the franchise, and they extended him. I didn't know we'd be having that conversation, and it's almost time to have that conversation.
Absolutely, and people in Kansas City are watching an all-time great. I give the team credit. They gave him a long contract before the year started. They knew, he showed last year that he was certainly going to be an all-star caliber player. I think they're looking at certainly a Hall of Fame player. That draft from 2019 is going to be debated for a long time. Obviously, the Orioles got a great player in Rutschman, switch hitting catcher. But Bobby Witt Jr., that was a no-brainer at #2, Kansas City. It was an obvious pick. Those were the top 2 guys. But that is quite a draft with Volpe, Henderson, Corbin Carroll. That's going to be rank up there with, was it 2005 or 6, I think, draft. But this kid is amazing. I saw him play perfect game when he was in high school. He was a level above everybody else. And I saw him in a home run competition at an all-star game. He's just an incredible athlete. And as we know,
he's baseball-y, too. Look at that. Hold on a second.
He's amazing.
What he's doing. For him to hold on there, took a knee to the head. Look at this.
Nothing. It was like nothing to him. It was like a fly. It was nothing. He's amazing. Amazing speed, amazing power. It is interesting that two fastest guys currently playing in Major League Baseball were the guys going into the opposite field. I don't know if that's coincidental or what. Ellie De La Cruz and Bobby Witt. I think Garrett Mitchell's probably the fastest, but he's out. So these are the two fastest guys currently playing.
A -11, that's bad. But a -11 to a +14 is significant. Now he's one of the better fielders at shortstop. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I was like looking at his numbers of last year, right? You dive into all the external ones, but just across the board, the standard baseball numbers, right? 28 doubles, 11 triples, 35 home runs. 49 stolen bases. Like, we got so caught up in what Acuna was doing with the 40-70.
Right.
He was almost 30-50. I mean, and then you add, so offensively, you put that aside. Okay, now what are you doing defensively to put yourself in that category of top elite players in this league, best player in the game?
Yeah.
And then the increase he's doing. And I think that's just coming up and understanding the speed of the game. At first, it's kind of fast, especially on the defensive side of the ball for young players. And now he's just honing that craft. And you see that play where he gets run over by a player, the guy jumps over top of him, and he didn't panic, he didn't freak out. He's like, okay, knock my hat off, now let me make a good throw to first base. This guy is the cream to the top right now, and it is fun to watch. They got a great player.
I think also he was coming in the shadow of Fernando Tatis at shortstop, who's also a spectacular talent. But now Tatis is already off shortstop, and he's there. And again, we'll have the conversation. We'll get you in the showdown eventually.
I've been in the showdown a few times.
I know you have.
Okay.
I don't want to leave you out. All right, other news today. We want to deal with this. Ippei Mizuhara is scheduled to be arraigned today. U.S. attorneys say Shohei Ohtani is a victim and that Mizuhara, Ohtani's friend, or I call him former friend and interpreter, stole more than $16 million from him and lost over $40 million overall in gambling. This is Major League Baseball's statement that we're aware of the charges filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office against Mizuhara for bank fraud. After a thorough federal investigation, according to that investigation, Ohtani is considered a victim of fraud. No evidence that he authorized betting with an illegal bookmaker. Further, the investigation did not find any betting on baseball by Mr. Mizuhara. Given the information disclosed, other information we've already collected, we will wait until resolution of the criminal proceeding to determine whether further investigation is warranted. Again, Mizuhara is scheduled to be arraigned today. I think a lot of people were waiting for something to happen. I had already heard like a few times, like, boy, that really went away. Nothing seems to be happening here. It took a little bit of time. Yeah. But there was skepticism that I think was warranted, given that the way the story broke out and there were multiple reveals of what actually happened. People were skeptical. This seems to align with exactly what Ohtani was saying, where he left himself like really no wiggle room, saying, no, I've been defrauded. I knew nothing about this. This aligns with that. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, he looks certainly like the victim in this, as he said that he was. I mean, Major League Baseball, this is a huge relief for everybody in Major League Baseball, myself included, that Ohtani, really the only thing you could say about Ohtani is that he doesn't know anything about finances. It's, the reason there was so much skepticism is you can't imagine somebody stealing this amount of money from you without knowing about it. And he obviously has financial advisors, but obviously he just didn't know. And the other thing is that, he has poor choice in best friends. Big deal. The guy is a ball player, and that's it. He's not a bettor, and it's a big relief for baseball. Now, baseball is going to interview Ohtani, and they'll try to interview Mizuhara. Mizuhara doesn't have to cooperate as Ohtani does, but, at this point, I could clearly say that he's a victim, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think, too, in this case, obviously, like, Ohtani hands his phone over to the FBI and says, the federal investigators, and says, hey, go ahead, look at it. Like, I can't get my kids to hand over their phone for dinner. So, that's a lot of trust in knowing that, hey, I feel like I didn't do anything wrong here. I've been taken advantage of. And sometimes as players, we talked about a little bit about this, you get so hyper-focused on playing your sport that the people that you trust around you to take care of some certain things, guys, it's happened before. This isn't the first time somebody's been taken advantage of. And I think for Shohei to be taken advantage of like this, I mean, it's sad. It's sad on the level of for Mizuhara. Like, I mean, think about to have that kind of addiction problem that you're now ruining relationships. You're going to go to probably prison, all this kind of stuff. And for Ohtani now to put up a wall, he was always a very private guy. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more of a wall put up because you're going to lose a lot of trust in some people.
Well, it happens. I've seen it a lot in boxing, where if you're that singular talent and you just want to be able to focus on what you do that makes you great, and you let other people take care of things. And he had his own. He was listed as a de facto manager by the government prosecuting, saying, because this guy was operating as a manager, as a body man, as a translator. He was everything.
I mean, the guy was basically a glorified bouncer. I've been in that clubhouse a lot. He just kept people away from him and stayed close to him, and he was within inches of him most of the time, and he just trusted the wrong guy. This guy was not qualified to be a financial advisor. Or, to me, that's crazy. I mean, he did interpret well. He was good at that, but the whole thing, it seemed odd, but now it's resolved at this point.
Again, well, arraignment is later today. When we take a short break, we'll come back. Oh, well done. That's Kevin Brown from Masson calling games for the Orioles. Notice the work that we're doing on the show. I saw Paul Severino, who's calling Marlins games, our former colleague here, saying, I watch baseball he plays. It's sweeping the nation, baseball he plays.
Absolutely.
This is where you haven't been on the show in a long time. We dedicate a segment every single day, baseball awareness plays. Now that we're all talking the same analytics language, where's the competitive advantage? I think it's clean baseball out on the field.
Yeah, the small things within the game that can help you win. Everybody can hit a home run. Somebody can strike somebody out. How do you do those little things within a game that help you win ball games?
Right, and they're little things that are actually big things. Let's start here. We'll go back a few days. This is on Wednesday, and this is Carlos Correa. Relay plays always get lost. I think it's because of the way, television covers them. It's hard to see exactly. Correa comes up the line. There's Shohei Ohtani, and he is flying. It's Correa who comes up to the right field line and makes this throw. He'd be ruled safe initially. They'd overrule it. He's out.
Yeah, great. I mean, terrific play by Correa, who's got one of the best infield arms in baseball. I mean,
look at how far he's got to go.
Right. I mean, you see this all the time in Little League and high school where the shortstop is so much better than the second baseman, but you don't see it that much in the major leagues where the second baseman's also pretty good.
Yeah, we circle it. Again, that's a real athletic play.
Yeah, and this is a play that happens in spring training where they probably, say, hey, listen, on this play, if there's a ball down the line, Correa's going to be there. Eduardo, you're gonna move over to second base.
And look, he was telling as well afterwards. He said, that's Edouard Julien. If he had a better arm, I would let him go get it. That's what I tell him. But he's got the arm. He goes out and gets it, keeping it real.
Within that play, by the way, because I broke this down the other night, baseball he plays, bad secondary lead by Shohei Ohtani. He had no secondary lead. If he would have had a secondary lead, he would have been safe at home.
Oh, nice. Get it baseball within the baseball. Okay, next. Let's go to Joe Adell. This is Joe Adell for the Angels, down 4-2. Angels down 4-2 in the eighth, 2 outs. Adell takes off, stealing second, doesn't slide, and then, inexplicable. And you know that makes Ron Washington and Bo Porter, I was in camp with those guys, makes them nuts. Washington even talked about it after the game.
It's obvious he overran the bag. We're down 4-2 right there in the eighth inning. If you're going to decide to get that bag, you got to get the bag. I don't care what kind of jump you got to get that bag, simply because of the situation of the game. It is a teaching moment. Hopefully that will never happen again, because when you actually look at it, it was embarrassing to all of us. I know Joe didn't mean that in that manner, but we down 4-2, and it was a teaching moment.
I like that it was addressed and the way Ron Washington handled it. That's embarrassing. Yet, look, he's a human being. We make mistakes. But it still could be spelled out that cannot be allowed if we're going to be as good as we're supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a higher league. There's nothing on the moon yet that we can play on. So this is the elite of the elite. How much can you separate the mental and physical mistakes? And this is clearly a mental mistake. And that's what they always say. The more of those, then you're not a big league ball player. And I'm not saying Joe's not a big league ball player. I'm just saying you can't make many more of these. This is a teaching moment. The rest of the year, every time you're going into a base, you better slide. I don't care what it is.
Wash keeping it real there. I mean, that's a play you shouldn't even make in high school. I mean, seriously.
Right.
You got to know better than that. And it is the situation, too. Down 4-2, that makes it worse.
Well, you see, things can happen. Again, our big thing that we try to show here is when you just miss the cutoff man. When you're trying to throw, it's a guy on third, but there's trail runners, and then the throw comes into the plate. And you see it in spring training where they teach it again and again and again, and yet a guy will airmail it over the cutoff man, where it's hey, give them a choice to cut the ball off and stop the free flow of runners around the bases. But that's it's not quite a single, but gaining an extra base is almost as important as a single.
No, absolutely. And you have to be able to try and figure out how to gain any advantage you can. And it's funny, in that play right there, the shortstop clearly was deking him because there was no I'm getting ready for this throw. You could see he was just standing up, and Joe fell for that. He was like, oh, nothing's happening here. There's no action. But if you're going to let the outside environment dictate your situation, you're going to find yourself in trouble.
It's a good point right there. See, you're getting deeper and deeper in the game. We're going to keep you here for baseball. All right, time to think baseball. They don't get this ahead of time. We're talking about pitching. We're talking about durability. Who is the only pitcher in Major League history to lead his league in complete games 7 consecutive? That's easy for you, John?
Too easy.
Too easy?
John, I'm a nerd.
We'll ask another one. It's too easy for John Heyman anyway. Think baseball, the answer next.